Once you know how to collect like terms, you are then ready to begin adding and subtracting polynomial expressions. Remember that a polynomial is an algebraic expression consisting of one or more terms that are connected by addition or subtraction signs. And by the end of this lesson, you will be able to add and subtract polynomials with up to 2 variables. Let's begin by taking a look at the rules or the steps involved in adding polynomials. So when you are adding polynomials, the rule is that you can simply remove the brackets and collect the like terms. So here's an example: 4x plus 3 plus 7x plus 2. So step 1 is to just remove the brackets. So you're basically going to recopy the expression that you were given, but without the brackets. So I'm going to write 4x plus 3 plus 7x plus 2. Step 2, you are going to rearrange or collect your like terms. So when I scan and look at this expression, I see that there are terms with x's, and I see that there are terms that are just plain numbers. So if I were to collect like terms, I would get, or I could write, 4x plus 7x, those are like terms, and then I have plus 3 plus 2. Those are my plain numbers that are like terms. And then finally, we're just going to perform the addition. So 4x plus 7x is 11x. Remember that you were only adding the coefficients, the numbers in front of the letters. Do not change the letters, do not add the letters, you're just recopying the letters. So 4x plus 7x is 11x. And then I've got 3 plus 2, which is a positive 5. So my final answer is going to be 11x plus 5. All right, so let's try that again, just to see if you can get the hang of it. So we've got 3x plus 1 plus 2x plus 8. So we're going to put an equal sign. Our first step is to just take off the brackets. So I'm going to recopy 3x plus 1 plus 2x plus 8. My next step is to collect any like terms that I happen to see. So I have terms that have x's, those can go together. So that's going to be the 3x plus 2x. And then I have terms that are just plain numbers, and those are going to go together. Plus 1 plus 8. And now we can actually perform the addition. So we'll begin by adding 3x plus 2x. That is a total of 5x. And then we can put together the 1 and the 8. So 1 plus 8 is 9, or positive 9. So you're going to put in plus 9. So your final answer will be 5x plus 9. All right, now it's your turn to give it a try. Pause the video so that you can try out this example, and then you can come back to the video when you're ready to see the full solution. So the first step is to remove the brackets. So I've gone ahead and done that and written out or recopied the question. And what you might notice is that I've put brackets, or I've left brackets, around the term negative 6x squared. And the only reason that I've done this is because in math, you cannot have two signs directly beside each other. So this is a negative 6x squared. So just to make sure that we know that it's a negative number, you need to put brackets around it. So while yes, the first step is to remove brackets, okay, we do have to leave this set of brackets on the negative 6x squared, just in order to distinguish between the two signs. All right, our next step is to collect like terms. So what like terms do we have in this expression here? So I have terms that have x squared, and I have terms that have just an x. So obviously the terms with the x squared are the 2x squared and the negative 6x squared. Those are like terms. And then I have a negative 3x and a positive 2x. Those are like terms. Now remember, the order does matter. So the order in which we write them does matter. So what should come first? X squared or just a plain x? Remember, you want to pick the one that has the higher exponent and put that one first. So an exponent of 2 is greater than an exponent of 1. So I'm going to put my x squared terms first. So that means I'm going to write 2x squared plus the negative 6x squared. And then I have my x terms. So I've got a negative 3x plus 2x. And now we're ready to perform the addition. So we've got 2x squared plus negative 6x squared. So be careful with how you're putting these numbers into your calculator. If you are using a calculator, make sure that you are pressing the proper button for negative and you're not putting in an actual subtraction sign. So 2 plus negative 6 is actually negative 4. And that is still x squared attached. So we've got negative 4x squared. And then we have to put together our x terms. So we can put together negative 3x plus 2x. So negative 3 plus 2 is a negative 1. Okay, now you can choose to write negative 1x, or remember, you don't have to include the 1, so you can choose to leave that out if you would like. So your final answer is then going to be negative 4x squared, take away x. We're now going to move on to subtracting polynomials. Now the steps for subtracting polynomials is a little bit different than what we just saw or what you just learned. The rule for subtracting polynomials states that when you are subtracting, you can subtract each term in the second polynomial, which means the second bracket. So let's take a look at a couple of examples so I can explain exactly what that means. So we have our example 3y plus 5, take away 7y plus 4. All right, so step 1 tells us that we need to subtract each term in the second bracket. Now, that's kind of a tricky saying. There is a much easier way to explain it. So what you're going to do is everything that's in this first bracket, you're just going to recopy it. You're going to take off the brackets and just recopy. So I'm going to write 3y plus 5. That part will stay the same. It's just the second bracket that we need to play around with a little bit. Okay, so what you're going to do is inside the second bracket, let's take a look at this first term here. That is a positive 7y. Okay, I know that there is a negative right here in the middle, or a subtraction sign in the middle. Don't worry about that right now. I just want you to focus on the 7y. So the 7y is a positive 7y. But when you write it out in your next line or in your expression that you're filling out, you're going to write it as the opposite. So although we see a positive 7y, you are going to write down negative 7y. So it's the opposite. Okay, the same thing is going to apply to this 4. It looks like a positive 4, but you are going to write it as the opposite. So the opposite of a positive 4 is a negative 4. So this is your brand new expression. And then the same rules apply. You're going to collect the like terms and you're going to perform whatever addition or subtraction that you see. Okay, so what are the like terms that we have in this equation? So I see that there are terms that have the letter y attached. So that would be my 3y and my negative 7y. Those are like terms. And then I have terms that are just plain numbers. So that would be the plus 5 and the minus 4. Once you've collected your like terms, you can actually go ahead and perform the math. So the first thing I'm going to do is 3y take away 7y. 3 take away 7 is negative 4. There's a y attached, so we're going to keep the y. And then we move on to the next part, which is 5 take away 4, or if you want to read it as positive 5 take away 4. So 5 take away 4 is 1. It's a positive 1. So I'm going to put in plus 1. Now, sometimes students say, well, how come we write the 1? You know, the rule usually is if we we have a 1, you don't have to write it or you don't have to include it. That only applies to if the 1 is attached to a letter. This 1 is not attached to a letter. It's just a plain number 1. So you cannot leave it out. You have to include it. Okay. If you were to leave it out, then your answer would just be negative 4y, and that wouldn't be correct. You need the full answer, which is negative 4y plus 1. All right, so let's try it again with this next practice question. 4x plus 3, take away 7x, take away 2. So we're going to put an equal sign. Now, the first thing we're going to do is everything that's inside this first bracket, we're going to just recopy it. So I'm going to write 4x plus 3. Okay, then I'm going to move on to the second bracket. And so inside the second bracket, my first term is a positive 7x. So I'm going to write the opposite of that. So the opposite of positive 7x is negative 7x. Okay, and then I have a negative 2. So the opposite of a negative 2 is a positive 2. So this is the expression that I'm now going to be working with. My next step is to collect like terms. So I'm going to check what kind of like terms do I have. Well, I've got a 4x, and I also have another term with an x. That would be this negative 7x. So I'm going to put that in. And then I have terms that are just plain numbers. So I've got this plus 3, and that can go along with my plus 2. All right, and now I'm just going to perform the math. So I've got 4x take away 7x. That is a negative 3x. And then I have positive 3 plus 2, or just 3 plus 2. And 3 plus 2 is a positive 5. So my final answer is negative 3x plus 5. So just to change things up a bit, I now have brackets or sets of brackets that have trinomials. So there are 3 terms inside each of these brackets. Now that doesn't matter. You can have 2 terms, you can have 3 terms, you could have 20 terms inside each bracket. The rules are still going to be exactly the same. So we're going to start by putting an equal sign. And everything that's inside this first bracket, I'm just going to recopy it. So I've got a squared, take away 2x, plus 1. Now, everything that's inside the second bracket, you need to change the sign to the opposite. So let's start with this negative a squared. So it says negative a squared, but we want to write the opposite. So the opposite of that would be a positive a squared. Okay, then we have a negative 2a, but we want the opposite. So the opposite of that would be a positive 2a. And then finally we have this negative 5, and the opposite of that would be a positive 5. All right, so now we have written out the expression properly and with the correct signs, and now we're ready to collect like terms. All right, so what I've just actually realized is that there is a little bit of a typo in this question. If you've noticed that most of the letters used are A's, but then you've got this random X here. That's actually a typo. We're going to change that. So instead of X, we're going to actually erase it, and we're going to change it to the letter A. Okay, so if you have an X there in your written answer on your copy of your handout, you're just going to change it to an A. Okay, so now we're ready to collect like terms. So remember, when you are collecting like terms, you do need to put them in a particular order. So when I'm looking at my terms here, I have a squared, a, and then I have some plain numbers. Okay, and then again I have a squared, a, and a plain number. So in order to know what comes first, does a squared come first or does a come first? Remember, you need to put the variable with the highest exponent first. So squared or an exponent of 2 is larger than an exponent of 1. So a squared is going to come first, then the a terms, and then the plain numbers. So I've gone ahead and collected my like terms. So I have a squared plus another a squared. Then I have my a terms, so that's a negative 2a plus 2a. And then I'm going to put in my plain numbers, which were the positive 1 and the positive 5. And now we're just going to go ahead and perform the math. So a squared plus a squared. Remember, just in case you've forgotten, there is a 1 in front of each of these terms. So really, what is 1 plus 1? It's 2. And then the a squared is still attached. So 1a squared plus 1a squared is 2a squared. Okay, moving on to our next set of like terms, we've got negative 2a plus 2a. So negative 2 plus 2, well, that's 0. So the a term, or terms, are actually going to disappear. You don't need to write plus 0 in your equation because that's like saying plus nothing. So now we're going to move on to the last set of terms, the 1 plus 5. 1 plus 5 is 6, or a positive 6. So we're going to write in plus 6. So our final answer is going to be 2a squared plus 6. All right, now it's your turn to give it a try. You have questions C and D that you can subtract and figure out an answer to. So go ahead and pause the video, give the questions a try, and when you're ready to see the solution, you can come back to the video. So for question C, remember that you can recopy everything that's in the first bracket, but everything in the second bracket, you need to change the sign to the opposite. So the positive 7x should be written as negative 7x. The positive 3y should be written as negative 3y. And the negative 2z should be written as positive 2z. Your next step is then to collect like terms. So your 2x terms will go together. 3x take away 7x. Your 2y terms will go together. Y take away 3y, or 1y take away 3y. And your z terms go together. So that's a negative 4z plus 2z. Remember, the order does matter. So we don't have any variables that have exponents, but you then do need to put them in alphabetical order. So your order should be x, y, z. When you perform the math and collect like terms, your final answer should work out to be negative 4x minus 2y minus 2z. And don't forget that in front of this y, there actually is a 1. So it's like saying 1y take away 3y. So in the last example, they try to confuse you. We've normally only been working with questions that have 2 sets of brackets, but this question has a third bracket that's included. But the same rules still apply. You're going to recopy the first bracket exactly as it is, but then inside the second bracket and the third bracket, you are going to change the signs of the terms to the opposite of what you see. So negative 9x should be positive 9x. Negative 4 should be positive 4, positive x should be negative x, and positive 14 should be negative 14. Your next step is to collect like terms, and so you should be grouping together all of your x terms first, and then all of your plain numbers. So if we actually perform the math, starting with our x values, 6x plus 9x take away 1x, we should get a value of 14x. And then if we put together our plain numbers, negative 12 plus 4 take away 14, that'll give us negative 22. So our final answer is 14x minus 22. To finish up, let's try a word problem that puts together the skills of adding and subtracting polynomials. 4 authors team up to write a new mathematics textbook. The publisher negotiates the following contracts with them. So if you look at the table or the chart that's included there, each author is listed by their name, and what money they get is also provided. So the author can get a fixed rate of money plus some royalties. So it's the money that they make for every book sold. So Lita gets $2,000, but unfortunately she doesn't get any royalties. So if they sell a certain number of books, she doesn't make any money off of that. James gets $1,000 fixed, but he also gets $2 for every book sold. Vera gets $1,500 as a fixed rate, and she gets $1 for every book sold. Remember, if you don't see a number in front of the N, there is an actual 1 there. So it's $1 for every book. And Fleming does not get a fixed rate. However, he does get $3 for every book sold. So the first thing we're asked to do is to write a simplified expression for each author's earnings. So we're basically going to go person by person and just write out what we know about them. So pretty much what I just read to you from the chart. So Lita only gets $2,000. James gets 1,000 plus 2N. So he gets a fixed rate of $1,000 plus $2 for every book. Now, N is used to represent the number of books sold, which they did tell us up here in the chart. And the reason why they've used a variable is because we don't know how many textbooks are going to be sold. It could be only a few hundred books, it could be a few thousand books, but we're not sure. So we have to use a variable to express that. Okay, for Vera is going to get 1,500 plus N, and Fleming, he only gets 3N. He doesn't get any kind of fixed rate. The next part of the question asks us to write a simplified expression for the total payout to the authors, which means basically if you were to combine all of their earnings together, how much money could they or would they make in total? All right, so basically we're just going to add each person together. So that means Lita plus James plus Vera plus Fleming. So each of the expressions that we wrote or created in part A, you're going to transfer them here. Now, we just have to be careful. Every expression for every person should be enclosed inside a bracket. So Lita was 2,000 plus James, and James was 1,000 plus 2N, plus Vera, who was 1,500 plus N, plus Fleming, who was just 3N. So that is the expression, but we do need to simplify it. So that means we need to collect any like terms that we see in the expression. So this is an addition question. So remember, the rules for adding polynomials is that you just take off the brackets and collect like terms. So I've gone ahead and collected like terms, and what you should get is that all of your n terms are grouped together and all of your plain numbers get grouped together. So now we're just going to go ahead and add them. So 2n plus 1n plus 3n gives you a total of 6n. And 2,000 plus 1,000 is 3,000. 3,000 plus 1,500 is 4,500. So the total payout, okay, and if you want to use a capital T here, you can. Okay, T for total. The expression that would represent the total payout or the total money that goes to these people for selling this textbook is represented by 6n plus 4,500. So the final part of the question asks you to determine the total amount paid to the authors if 1,200 textbooks are sold. So I'm going to go ahead and recopy the equation we just came up with. And if they're selling 1,200 textbooks, that means in the place of n, I'm going to put in 1,200. Remember that N represented the number of textbooks sold. So now we actually know how many books they can sell. They're going to sell 1,200. So we're going to start by multiplying 6 times 1,200, which is 7,200. And to that, we will add the 4,500. So 7,200 plus 4,500 is a total of 11,700. Now remember, at the end of every word problem question, you do need to write a concluding statement. So we're going to use therefore. Remember, this is the little symbol that we use in math to represent the word therefore. So therefore, the total payout to the authors would be, and remember, this is money, so you do need to include a dollar sign or a dollar symbol as your units. So it would be $11,700. And don't forget, dollar signs go in front of your number.